So this video is going to be from the perspective of you maybe have an A7 IV, you're looking at upgrading to the A7V. What am I actually going to be getting? Some of the features are older features that have been on previous cameras, previous releases from Sony. Some of these are brand new features. I also want to cover what I actually think about this camera. Did Sony do enough compared to some of the competition? I want to give you some examples of actually how some of these features work, how you'd use them, and everything will be chaptered along the bottom here, so you can just jump around to different sections if you don't want to see one thing or if you want to skip to a different section. Now, before we get into that, I want to give you my high level kind of what do I think take on the A7V. If you need more than 4K or you're looking for open gate, you're going to be disappointed with this camera. People are going to look down on it because of those two things compared to some competition models that have come out recently. I don't see a need for open gate in what I do. I know there is definitely a need out there for some people, but I do think that we needed more than 4K. I think Sony needs to start implementing 6K into some of their cameras like a lot of the competition has, and I did think this would be maybe the one to have it. There are cameras from Sony that have 8K, like the A7R5, the A1II. 6K would have been a real sweet spot for this camera, and I'm disappointed it doesn't have it. And now, outside of the 6K argument, camera upgrades are a lot more incremental now than they used to be. There's rarely big jumps in technological advancement, so there really wasn't anything huge that they could put into this outside of 6K and open gate. But what they have done is add a lot of little refinements, a lot of features from previous generations of cameras and some new things that really make this an extremely well-rounded hybrid camera for both photo and for video at a very attainable price. They've done a little bit more than I thought they would for this camera. I was a little worried, but I think they've done a good amount. This camera is going to very much appeal to people who wanted to upgrade from the A7 IV, for people that are new to the Sony world and want an attainable camera that's stacked with features, but also for people that are looking at a secondary body or a backup to one of their other Sony bodies. Editor's note here. So there's going to be people that decide this is enough and they're not sticking with Sony anymore. That's fine. You're entitled to your own opinion. Go do whatever you need to do. You don't need to go and destroy this camera. Just because it's not for you doesn't mean that it isn't for everyone else or a lot of other people, because there are going to be a lot of people that do think this is an upgrade. And there's also going to be people that are like, chill, this is paid by Sony. Sony doesn't pay for launch videos. It doesn't work like that. Get off your high horse and stop thinking you know everything. They do not pay for launch videos. It is not in their best interests to do that. I use Sony cameras because they work for me. I also have Nikon cameras. I also have Lumix cameras. I just like Sony because it works for me. It's simple. It's straightforward. It's reliable. I've used it for many years. I have zero complaints for what I do. Doesn't mean everything I do is going to be the same for you, but just wanted to throw that in there. Remember that when you switch systems as well, if you are thinking of doing that, it's not just the body. You got to buy glass, accessories, mounts, cages, all the stuff that goes with it as well. But if you want to swap, go ahead. You do you. Let's get back to the video. So the headline features that this camera has that you've likely seen discussed everywhere else already, but we'll talk about them and we'll get into some of these in a little bit more detail. It has a 33 megapixel partially stacked sensor, which we'll talk about in a bit more detail shortly, which shoots up to 7K oversampled 4K 60 full frame video. Put a pin in that. There is no crop, but you have to do something to make it that way out the box. 4K 120 in Super 35, so crop mode. You got your focus breathing compensation, you've got custom LUT support, you got a dedicated AI chip in there, so the autofocus has been greatly improved. White balance accuracy is now better. Rolling shutter has been greatly improved because of that partially stacked sensor. You got 30 frames per second blackout free shooting. They've also done a lot with the heat dissipation to make it perform a lot better. The A7 IV had a lot of overheating issues. The A7V has been tested to work for 90 minutes, shooting 4K 60 at 68 Fahrenheit, up to 60 minutes, 4K 60 at 105 degrees Fahrenheit. So they've done a lot to make this a high-performing camera at an entry-level price. So let's get into some of the actual features that you may not have seen discussed everywhere else. There's an adjustable video self-timer now. So if you go into shooting option and then self-timer here, you have either on or off. And when it's on, you can specify a time. So 3, 5, or 10 seconds. And you can also specify whether you want it to occur only once or every single time, so it repeats itself. So for example, if you have it set to 3 seconds and then repeat, if we just click OK, and now we hit record, you see it gets a countdown on there. It's an interesting feature that I haven't seen on a Sony camera before. Maybe it's been on one that I don't have, like the A1II, but yeah, it's in there. It's a feature that I think creators will use more than anyone else, but It's interesting. The A7V does connect to Monitor and Control, which is the app I'm using right now to watch myself, to film everything, to change the settings. It's a phenomenal app that you can use both on your phone, you can use on your iPad. It works both wirelessly, it works wired with a USB-C cable. Previously, some of the older cameras only worked with the Creators app, which if you shoot photos and you need to be in like a studio environment, you need to have it as like a remote. It works really great for that, but the video aspects using Creators isn't as good. So that's why Monitor and Control came out. And originally it was just for the FX series of cameras, but it does work with some of Sony's more recent releases, including the A7V. There's a bunch of video tools in there, which you might find really useful. You can change your LUTs. You can change all the settings when you're on the fly recording. And it's really nice to just be able to use your phone as a monitor if you wanted to. Remember I said how there's a pin-in 4K 60 full frame uncropped? The camera can do that, but not straight out the box. I think this is gonna be really confusing for people when they first get the A7V if they haven't watched videos, which there is a big population of people out there who aren't just watching things all on YouTube. When you switch the camera to 4K 60, straight out of the box, it is gonna crop. So we're in 24, as you can see right there, but if we change this to 60, you see how it crops in there a little bit? So what you actually need to do is go to your video, and then this setting right here, 4K angle of view priority, and you want to set that to on, and then it uncrops. So it's the same field of view as if you were shooting 24 frames per second. Now it does let you know that when you do this right here, it sets whether or not to widen the angle of view for recording by disabling part of the noise reduction processing when shooting 4K movies. It's also useful to know that if you do change it back to 24 here and then go back, you actually can't enable that. It's only in 4K 60. And I think this should have been called something else, 4K uncropped 60 or 4K 60 uncropped or something like that. And the caveat with this mode is that it reduces the in-camera noise reduction. Now, for all intents and purposes, what we were told is that this does not impact the image quality. It doesn't appear to, but it's worth pointing out that you do lose the in-camera noise reduction if you enable this mode, which is the only way to get the uncropped 4K 60. It's just an interesting way to do it, and clearly this is a result of the partially stacked sensor being the key between what the A7IV could do and what the A7V can now do, which is that uncropped aspect, because before it was cropped. Now, a partially stacked sensor means that there's a little bit of circuitry there helping alleviate the work that the sensor has to do. That partially stacked sensor enables a few things like faster readout, which means a significantly reduced rolling shutter. The A7V has way better rolling shutter performance than the A7IV did, which was a common complaint with it. That partially stacked sensor also allows you to get better autofocus speed. It also allows things like blackout free shooting, enables pre-capture. It sits between what is an unstacked sensor and a fully stacked sensor and allows you to do things that you couldn't do with just an unstacked sensor. Now that diagram there of the partially stacked sensor, that's not something that's readily available for you to download. I actually had to make that. I have no idea how to do that. So I actually used today's sponsor to kind of showcase it, and it was Artlist. It was made in Artlist. Now, no AI and creating AI content right now is a hot topic because there's a lot of bad stuff being made. There really is. There's a lot of slop on the internet, and it's down to us creators to start using this in better ways that can actually kind of help tell stories and help our videos, basically. So that's what I've been trying to do, and I thought this was a really good way to showcase that. So the way that I was actually able to create that from scratch was by obviously doing a little bit of research into what a partially stacked sensor was, coming up with some form of a definition I can give to ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT created the prompt for me, which I can then put onto Artlist and then select the model, which was Nano Banana Pro, and generate the image. And it actually generates up to 3 images if you want it to, so you have 3 different variations you can work with. Now, it took me a few times to actually get an image that I was somewhat happy with, that I think really explains everything properly. And it's easy to take an image that you've generated and just put it into Nano Banana Pro and get it to make some quick changes for you. You can do that within Artlist as well. Once I had the image that I was happy with, I can then animate that also using Artlist's photo to video. You can actually just tap on the image and then click animate, give it a prompt, and it created the infographic that you saw. As I said, it's included in your Artlist membership now, Nano Banana Pro that is, as is Google Video 3.1, the latest one. Sora's in there as well, Sora 2. If you're not already an Artlist member and you want to try this out, click on the link down below. That'll get you an additional 2 months free if you sign up for a year, which is the best value way to get an Artlist membership anyway. Thank you, Artlist, for continuously supporting the channel here. Let's get back to the video. Because this is a much more powerful camera, you can shoot blackout free 30 frames per second, continuous shooting. And because it's a much faster readout, you're not gonna have any of the issues that you might have had with rolling shutter on the A7 IV. So if you need to shoot super fast, this is where you do it. It's your continuous shooting speed settings, anything from 5 all the way up to 30 there, and then you need to change your drive mode to high plus, and then that's how you can do your super fast shooting. What I will say is if you need the absolute best performance in terms of if you're shooting sports and you don't want a golf club to maybe have a slight bend to it, then you always want to use mechanical shutter, but you're probably going to be completely fine using the electronic shutter with this camera. Now the A7V also has pre-capture, and you can specify how you want that to work. Basically what this is doing is when you depress the shutter, it's always shooting for you behind the scenes. And then when you actually hold down the shutter, that's when it starts to take more and more photos. You can specify the range of how you want this to work, but it really means if you're shooting wildlife or sports or something like that, and you slightly miss the action, like you're a little late holding down the shutter, odds are you've probably caught it anyway with pre-capture. Something which might be a nice little feature, I don't know how hard this would be to implement, but would be to have pre-capture with electronic shutter, but then when you hold down the shutter and it actually like starts taking photos when you meant to take the photos, it then swaps to mechanical shutter. I don't even know if that's possible. I don't know how I came up with the idea, but I feel like that way it would give people the best of both worlds if they need to just make sure everything is absolutely perfect. Now in terms of your IBIS, your stabilization, this camera has a big bump compared to the A7 IV because 7.5 stops and dynamic active mode has been added. So on from the active stabilization mode that you may have used before. There's another one up from that, it's called dynamic active. Really useful if you're using telephoto lenses where you're a little bit more zoomed in, where you might see a bit more jitter on there. Dynamic active will really help you with that. Interestingly, they've added the creative looks from the RX1R Mark III. I thought they may just be a unique thing for that camera, but no, they've added them for this. So there's a film 1, film 2, and film 3, and I think some other ones as well, but the 1, 2, and 3 film ones were the ones that I liked. They just have a really nice look to them, a good contrast and tones in there, and they're a nice way to just get a baked-in, good-looking JPEG that honestly doesn't really look like Sony colors just straight out of the camera. So if you're into shooting JPEG, which I am a lot recently, then you can just shoot with those. You got the aspect markers on there as well. So if you watched my video up here, which the A7C was the big subject of, then you can shoot in this beautiful cinematic style because you can enable aspect markers for stills. You can shoot in the 235:1 aspect ratio, black out everything around it. It's a really enjoyable way to shoot. And you can crop now your images in camera. There's a setting to go and do it after the fact, but you still can't crop to 235:1. It's like 16:9. 1:1. I really would have loved to send that in there, but maybe in another one in the future. There's a feature called focus and zoom presets, which allow you to, using a custom button, set specific in and out points for focusing, or if you're using a power zoom lens, the zoom point at which it's zoomed in or zoomed out, and then you can just tap that custom button to retrieve them. I'll show you a demo here how it works. So if you go into this menu right here, preset, focus and zoom. If you click and hold just here, in camera guide, really great example or explanation of what it's going to do for you. But basically when you go into this, you can set up to 6 points for focus or zoom. So we've got the 135 G Master attached right now. You have to have autofocus assist turned on. I'm going to just make this out of focus, and I'm going to click and hold C3, which is the custom button I assigned to do this for my preset focus number 1. Click and hold C3. It's now registered that point of the focus. Now if I make this in focus, kind of, and then click this, C3, it brings back that focus point. Now I've got the 16:35 power zoom on here, and let's say I zoom all the way in and I focus at that point right there. I click and hold C3 because I want to register it. Registered the preset focus zoom 1. Now I'm going to zoom out all the way to 16, and then I can just tap C3, and it will zoom all the way in and focus for me. So this camera does have the same body, very similar body to the A7V in terms of the grip, the body design, and the fact that it has that beautiful screen on there, the multi-angle variable screen. But To go on from that, having that really nice screen, is they've increased the quality of the screen way better. It's always been a big complaint from me and from other people that Sony screens just aren't the best quality. Now they have in a 3.2 inch, 2.1 million dot LCD with DCI P3 gamut support. It's a much higher quality little panel in there that should have been in there for the past few years, but it's really welcome. It's obviously a nicer screen when you're looking at it when you're shooting with it. I'll also say that as an A7V owner, I always felt like the screen and the EVF never really matched, and now they match perfectly. Like if you're looking through one, you go back to the screen, there's no difference. On the subject of that EVF, it's a 3.68 million dot quad VGA OLED EVF, and it can go up to 120 frames per second, and you can change the color and the brightness as well inside the menus. You've got vertical menus now for both stills and, more importantly, for video if you want to shoot vertical content for that. So when you rotate the camera, you just see all the menus that you have selected, all the options in a vertical alignment instead. And there's also another feature inside the menus which I really like. Now you have the ability in the menus here, if you wanted to go through and add things, you can tap the trash. Before this was just the in-camera guide. Now you have the in-camera guide and add to my menu. It's just a super fast way to add to your menus, which before was very, very cumbersome, very slow, and I don't think really anybody used it. So we could add this there if you wanted to, and you've got up to 6 menus that you can use. And these, if you're not sure where they work, or where they appear, sorry, is up here. So you got menus. I've only added on 2 my menus so far, so there's only 2 things here, but you could use one for stills, one for video. You could completely customize this, and it's so quickly to add things there now. Completely changes the way that you can potentially use the My Menu system. There was also a really useful tool that I saw in the menus for changing the white balance frame size. If you shoot video, this is really useful. I'll show it to you now. If you find yourself setting lots of custom white balances and you find this box is a little bit too big or too small, what you can do now is go into menu and you can change it's in white balance capture frame size to small or medium. And now you have a much smaller, more precise box. So let's say I want to capture the white balance of that light right there. It's very precise because it's a much smaller box. And there was another feature in terms of power management to help your battery life, which I haven't seen in there before, which I'll show you. If you're used to having your monitor brightness set to sunny weather, you might find you chew through batteries. So there's this new power saving option. We're used to these two right here, but this one right here, the monitor low bright. Basically what it does is it sets the time until the monitor brightness is lowered, but it also changes the refresh rate to save battery. So you can specify a time you want to use or have it off. It goes all the way up to 1 minute, and then watch what happens. The screen will dim. So now it's dimmed, and it also changes the refresh rate, and you can tap any button you want and it brings it right back straight away. After 2 seconds, it'll dim it again. Shutter also works as well, and you can change the way that that reacts just here by power save by monitor, and it lets you sets whether or not to enable linkage between the monitor open and close and power save, enters power save mode when closing inwards, and returns from power save mode when opened. Just a way to save battery. The A7V also has 2 USB-C ports on the side of it, taking away one of the previous Sony ports, which was basically a micro USB-C port. Now they're not both the same, but what it means is you can basically have the camera plugged in and charging while having the other port being used for connecting to monitor and control, to tether, to do something else. So I don't want to get this wrong, so I'm just referencing my notes here, but one of the ports is a 3.2 Gen 2 10 gigabits per second port, and the other is just a USB 2.0 power delivery port. So you want to use the USB 2.0 power delivery port for charging the camera, and then the other one for anything that involves data transfer. With the way that we use cameras now, some people use this as a webcam, people are connecting them to USB-C monitors. This is a really nice touch, something I didn't think about before, but really smart that it's been added. So those are some things that stood out to me as being new and interesting features with the A7V. What do you think about this camera? If you are a long-term Sony user, you're an A7IV user, maybe even an A7III user, how do you think this camera fares in the market as it stands right now? Pop your comment down below. Otherwise, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.